So I was sitting at my desk playing with my upgraded Steam Deck when someone sent me a Discord DM. It was a post from r/Steam Deck modded from 10 months ago with almost 8,000 upvotes. All I saw was just a single picture of a box with a bunch of small parts around it. The text read, "The Steam Brick. No screen, no controls." Intriguing. But there was only one question on my mind. Why? I had to know more. Underneath, they linked to a full build write-up. And according to this absolute madman, the reason he did all this was because it didn't fit into his backpack. A perfectly understandable issue. It barely fits into mine, and my backpack is huge. And now, instead of using a screen on the deck, they have to either attach it to AR goggles or a TV. The logic fits, but the idea itself still seemed crazy, which the dude completely agreed with. He even prefaces this as a generally very bad idea. So basically, they removed all the controls, the screen, and stripped the Steam Deck to its basic components, making it as small as humanly possible. This is either genius or downright crazy. Instead of using the Steam Deck case, they opted to 3D print a holding box for it, and thus the Steam Brick was born. This was by far the weirdest yet most interesting idea I think I had ever seen someone come up with. Now, modding has been somewhat my new obsession, and I've been looking for the next thing to sink my teeth into. I've had a ton of experience doing crazy mods before with keyboards, making the loudest keyboard, the quietest, the brightest, and even modding the biggest keyboard I've ever seen. I upgraded my Steam Deck recently with some insane mods, and it's been so much fun to use now. And since then, I have been deep diving into the modding community. I've seen all sorts of crazy things I never knew you could do to it. So when I saw the Steam Brick, a dangerous thought crept into my mind. Should I try this? So I stared at my own Steam Deck and realized there is no universe where I was going to rip apart the OLED model I just upgraded. I mean, I could barely take apart a Steam Deck and successfully do a shell swap. There's no way I'm taking my precious OLED and just tear it apart like a disposable toy. Not after all the time, money, and emotional support I put into it. I just fixed stick shift, and now I'm supposed to rip the joysticks out like they're worthless? No way. There had to be a better idea, and that's when it hit me like a brick. Get it? Facebook Marketplace. I can just buy somebody else's broken Steam Deck to attempt this build with. I'm basically doing them a favor by taking it off their hands. And they'll be doing me a solid too. Now I just needed to find one at a decent price. But weirdly, when I searched for Steam Deck on the marketplace, there were a ton of them popping up for $1 and $5. There had to be some sort of scam here, right? To make it even worse, when I clicked on a few of their profiles, it said they had been made this year. Suspicious. No way was I sending any of these people my money, or even sketchier, meeting up with them in person. So I resorted to a slightly less sketchy option. eBay. I was specifically looking for Steam Decks with a broken screen, but many of these were in bids with less than a couple minutes left. Eventually, I gave up and just found a good deal on a used one. Sure, it wasn't a steal, but still better than buying new. And staring at that price point that hurt just a bit, I clicked through the checkout page. That's it. I was locked into this project, no turning back now. After a few days of anticipation, my new to me Steam Deck had arrived, and this thing was working perfectly fine. It even came with an additional micro SD card. Nice. The LCD screen isn't anywhere near as nice as my OLED one, but man, it's still a perfectly functioning machine, which makes me feel even worse that I plan on ripping this thing apart. In order to build my very own Steam Brick, I had to get it as small and portable as possible by removing everything that wasn't absolutely vital for the Steam Deck to operate. First thing I needed to do was remove the rear shell so I could access the controls. And because of my previous Steam Deck adventure, I had all the tools already, but I also knew how to do the regular teardown stuff already. So 30 minutes later, I exposed the innards of my Steam Deck, and it was easy cheesy so far. Pro tip, for projects with small parts like this, get yourself an ice tray to stay organized. You are welcome. It wasn't until I got to the screen removal where things got a bit dicey. That was the moment of truth. Even though I wasn't planning to reuse a screen, removing it was scarier than it should have been, because right behind it, just millimeters behind it, was the motherboard. And the motherboard is the nervous system of the Steam Deck. All the important stuff lives there. And soldered directly at the center is the CPU, the brain of it. So if any of that gets damaged, it's game over, buddy. No pressure, right? So it was time to bust out another handy tool from my corner of tools, the eye opener kit, with its long gel tube to loosen up the glue on the inside of the screen, which was super easy to use. All I had to do was heat it up, plop it onto the screen, and within 30 seconds, I had a pick underneath that screen. Just a little bit of finagling, and just like that, the screen was gone. At this point, things were going too well. well, I hoped I didn't damage anything by going too fast.
If you're looking for a Steam Deck or other handheld gaming devices and you don't want to pay the full sticker price, check out Jawa.gg, today's sponsor. Jawa doesn't only have handhelds, they have full PCs, PC parts, peripherals, and more. And don't be fooled, just because it's a marketplace of sellers and buyers on the internet doesn't mean it's a sketchy free-for-all. Jawa vets all of their sellers and has a full suite of buyer protections too. They review each part and listing to make sure it meets their standards, making sure the prices are fair and the products are authentic. Plus, if the item never shows up or doesn't match the listing, they'll give you a full refund. Jawa started during the pandemic where PC parts were sold at astronomical prices, and they grew as a place where you actually could buy things for reasonable deals. If you got any spare PC parts and other tech laying around, Jawa is one of the best places to sell them. In addition to their buyer protections, they also offer seller protections. Buyers get up to 2 days to dispute a sale, and after that, the seller gets the funds. I've even put a bunch of my own listings on there too, a bunch of keyboards, of course. I'll try to add more things slowly, but most of our stuff ends up at Goodwill. So if you want to skip the hassle of researching, buying, and building a gaming PC for yourself, buy one from one of Jawa's verified sellers. Visit the link in the description below to get started. And while you're there, check out my storefront.
Everything still looked intact, so I kept going. Now I can pull off the front shell. Then suddenly, we were down to just the motherboard, the fan, the battery, and the frame, the core of the Steam Deck, without the bloat. We were so close, yet so far away. Because this wasn't enough. If I wanted to turn this into a real Steam brick, I needed to get it all the way down to just the bare skeleton. But this is where things got a little dicey. Since I haven't disassembled the motherboard before, this was all new territory for me. And like I was saying, the motherboard contains a lot of vital components that with just one small mistake could easily destroy this entire project. I started off first by cautiously removing the heatsink and the few small screws holding the motherboard onto the frame, thinking that I could just lift the whole thing off with everything else still attached. But of course not. It couldn't have been that simple. That's when I noticed these two small cables running across the bottom that looked like leftover speaker wires. So I pulled on them pretty hard to remove them. It's not like we'll be reinstalling speakers anyways, right? And that's when I realized I had made a big mistake. Because after looking at it a little closer, I realized that the two tiny wires ran underneath the SSD and attached to something under the battery. Something unknown, but seemed important. This is when I started to panic. I googled small wires on Steam Deck, which obviously was no help. At this point, I had to take a mental break, breathe, and reset before I went back to the problem at hand. When I was ready, I did some real research and discovered that the wires connect to two antennas, two very essential antennas, one for Bluetooth, the other for Wi-Fi. Basically the two things that this build literally depends on to even work. This tiny mistake might have just cost me my entire build. If I can't connect a Bluetooth controller, that defeats the whole purpose. Not to mention how useless a Steam Deck is without internet. It would become a literal Steam brick, a bona fide paperweight. Great. Deep breath. There was only one way to find out if everything still worked. To disconnect these little wires safely, I removed the SSD, but there was a sticky pad covering the wires up, which I carefully peeled back and was finally able to disconnect them. That let me remove the motherboard from the frame and set it aside, because at the end of the day, I still have to put this all back together again, if I could put it back together. Next, I removed the fan and audio board and set them aside. No issues here for once. And then the only thing left now attached to the frame was the battery. And since saws and batteries tend to not mix well, I desperately wanted to remove it. I had to. So I tried prying it out, but no luck there. The battery was held in by such strong glue that I had to move to plan B, heating it up using my heat gun and slide in a prying card behind it. But that didn't work either. At this point, I was a little anxious and I just sat there thinking, did I really come this far just to get stuck at the battery? I didn't want to be that person who blew up their battery while modding their Steam Deck though. But after a few more attempts, I said, screw it and just leave it in there. I'm gonna cut around it instead, which meant it was time for my new tool, the Dremel 3100. Basically, any rotary tool will work, but any real hobbyist will tell you Dremel is the way to go. I clamped my frame to a post outside because nobody wants tiny metal shavings on their workspace, put on some protective gear, that's right, safety first folks, and cautiously made my first cut into the frame, starting on the side farthest away from the battery. The little sandpaper discs cut through metal like a hot butter through knife. So satisfying. After a couple more cuts, this thing was looking more and more like like a brick. I was so close, which was exciting, but also terrifying because I still had no idea if any of this would work or not. Plus, I still had to figure out the 3D printed case. I checked the original Reddit post and saw the brick really was just a box with some ventilation holes. That looks easy enough. So I measured my Steam Deck remnants and got to work. My 3D printing skills are very limited, so I scrolled through the comments to see if someone had any tips. And to my surprise, the design files for the case were uploaded online as well. Shout out to Crastinator_Pro for saving me a bunch of time and effort. So I threw the files into the 3D printing app, hit print, and let the machine do all the heavy lifting, or heavy printing in this case. Easy peasy. While that was cooking, I went back to my Franken deck to begin the most terrifying process of this entire assembly, rebuilding it. First, the motherboard. As soon as I started to carefully put the screws back, I noticed a few of them were missing. What had gone wrong? I was so organized. There's no way I would be missing screws. I mean, look at this. Does this look like unorganized sloppy work to you? No, I've got screws in ice cube trays with labels. Then I realized in the normal way of rebuilding Steam Deck, other parts would go over this piece and then the screws would fit into the holes where I had missing screws. So I had to mentally rebuild the deck in my head to know which screw to use. Great. Doing 3D things in my head, not my strong suit. But eventually, I got the motherboard secured, and now it was time for the fan. And I ran into the same issue again. I'm starting to see a pattern here. So I did the heatsink, the wires, and the SSD, finally figuring it out. Now, my very own Steam brick was ready for its new shell. The 3D prints came out without any issues. I chose red and blue because, well, it seemed cool. But also, Spooderman. Now, it was looking way too official. Inside the case, the Steam brick was almost too perfect. Almost, because this specific case is designed around the OLED model and I used the LCD, but the dimensions were still accurate. Close enough. This thing was starting to come together quite nicely. Now I just had to see if it actually worked, which isn't an easy feat since it doesn't have any buttons or even a screen. So I plugged it into a docking station and braced myself for the results. Would it turn on, or did I just waste my entire week on this to make a real brick? And at first, nothing happened. I tried again, and the fan kicked on for just a second, which made me hopeful, but my monitor was still black. And I gave it a minute and tried again, hoping something had changed. A quick kick and a reboot fixes most problems, right? Then, my monitor lit up. It was working! Yes! The Steam brick lives! Even in its most bare bones form, it was still running games like nothing has changed. But we're not done yet. Remember when I tried yoinking those two small wires out? I still need to check Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So I connected my 8BitDo controller, and to my surprise, it worked. We did it, baby. Now all that was left was a portable screen. Technically, I could go with my current setup, plug in my Steam brick to it, or I could use a portable monitor. But where's the fun in that? This is supposed to be an ultra portable setup, something that saves space, not takes space. So I ordered a pair of AR glasses from Xreal, the Xreal 1s, and let's not talk about the price. We can talk about that later. Please don't judge me. Now, I might look a little goofy, but these were incredible. I could change the screen size with just a click of a button. It was like having a portable projector everywhere I went that only I could see. I had my own personal movie theater in my pocket, and while it felt amazing, a part of me felt like I was missing something. When I played on my Steam Deck, I could talk to the people around me, laugh at what was on the screen. It was like a social event. And while building the Steam brick made me feel accomplished, I actually feel like I gave up something important along the way. Now when I play, I feel isolated. I might as well be locked up in a room by myself, staring at a screen. But maybe I don't know how to use it properly yet? I guess only time will tell. Let me know in the comments if this is something that you would even try yourself. If you want to see me try a PlayStation 2 for the first time in 2025, check this video out right here. Bye.